Hey guys, it's PSL here, and I'm here for the finale in the What Matters Most series, and maybe I'll carry on this What Matters Most series into future games, but for now let's just focus on the present and final episode in this series of the What Matters Most on Gran Turismo 4 with a Honda NSX around Mazda Laguna Seca Raceway. Now in this episode we'll be looking at the overall effect of all of these parts on the NSX combined, and the bigger picture of this series through a few different things. And just as a proviso before I get into this video, if you want detailed information on each of these parts on the NSX, then check out the playlist where I analyse each component in its own video in some detail. Now firstly, let's look at how complex and intricate this series has been, because we've had clashes with experts such as Colin Chapman and his policy of adding lightness. Ferrari Enzo once said that aerodynamics are for people who can't build engines, and Jeremy Clarkson just goes power! And all sorts of other theories as to which is the most important aspect of a car in regards to its one lap speed. But in the end, the tyres had the biggest improvement on the NSX's lap time, as the racing qualifying tyres, or super softs, gave me an improvement of 10 seconds a lap from the standard tyres, which were sports mediums. The least influential thing were the brakes, with a 1/10 of a second improvement a lap, which, as I said in that video, may be due to the lack of straight line speed the NSX had for it to be actually useful. Anyway, the first thing we're going to do in this episode is see how slow we can make the NSX by having the standard car, and with the only component we tested that actually slowed down the NSX, the economy tyres, which actually slowed the NSX down by 10.2 seconds a lap from the standard car and 20.2 seconds from the faster tyres we tested. So we will see an NSX on the economy tyres and with the slowest driver we saw this series, Jeremy Clarkson. Or at least that was the plan, because after my tweets to Jeremy Clarkson that you can see on the screen here, I got no response. So I guess we'll just have to go for the second slowest driver we saw this series, unfortunately, which is my B-Spec driver, who, as I established at the start of the series, is very highly skilled and is nearly as good as it is possible to get a B-Spec driver in Gran Turismo 4. But despite that, he was still slower than me, as seen in the first part of this series. Anyway, so we can see his lap a little bit later, but now we've just got to remind you that the standard lap time for this series in the standard NSX was a 1 minute 39.7, and my personal lap time with the NSX on the economy tyres was a 1 minute 49.9 seconds. Now my B-Spec driver was 1 second slower than me in the driving comparison video, but on these tyres he was only 9/10 of a second slower than me. But the fact is that he was still slower than me, and that is still the slowest time we have seen this series. And now that lap time is the slowest lap time we've seen this series, which you are seeing in the background right now. But while that's in the background, I'll just quickly explain why this lap time was so slow. So obviously the tyres are terrible, because they have absolutely no grip, because ultimately the economy tyres are aimed at durability and saving the environment, not high-speed track driving, unlike the super quick racing qualifying tyres, or even the car's standard sports medium tyres, which are way more suited to a track than these tyres. Also, as we established, the B-Spec driver was slower than me anyway, for reasons which I can't quite work out, but I do suspect that he is less adventurous and aggressive going into corners than I am, and that is how he is losing time in comparison to me. And so, thanks to the economy tyres, which are dreadful, and the slightly slower driver, this is the slowest we can actually make the NSX, and is the ultimate slowest lap time from this series, through both the decreased grip levels from the tyres and the slowest driver that we could actually get hold of. So both the negative effects of the tyres and the driver meant that this lap time was over 10 seconds a lap slower than the standard lap time for this series. And also both the effect of the tyres and the driver were analysed in the first and second episode of this series respectively, so if you want more information on that, be sure to check out those videos in the playlist. So now, we've just seen the slowest lap time that this series has to offer, so let's go to the other end of the spectrum and check out the quickest. So by using the quickest driver from the series, that's me, and the quickest tyres from the series that were 10 seconds quicker than the standard car's tyres, nitrous on its most powerful setting of 70 to give us that ultimate 1 lap boost in speed, which gained us 5.3 seconds a lap from the standard car, the brakes with their 1/10 of a second improvement, but should be more useful with this powered up car. The front split and rear spoilers will also be fitted and put on the maximum setting, which gave us a 1.6 second improvement per lap. All the drivetrain parts such as the limited slip differential, triple plate clutch, racing flywheel and customizable transmission gave us a 1.1 second improvement per lap. The car's horsepower uprated from 281 horsepower to 462 horsepower gave us a 6.4 second improvement per lap, and the car being lightened from 1.3 tonnes to 1.139 tonnes offered a 1.9 second improvement per lap. Then finally, the NSX's uprated suspension gave it a further and final improvement of 1.1 seconds per lap. So with all the components that we tested in the previous 9 parts added up, we should theoretically see a total improvement of 27.5 seconds a lap from the standard car, or that equivalates to a lap time of 1 minute 12 seconds point 2 from the standard car's lap time of 1 minute 39.7. And while we might not quite achieve that, something in that region would be absolutely amazing and a brilliant end to this 10-part series. So let's get into this ultimate road going version of the NSX and have a look at its lap. So here we are guys for the super speed and ultra modified NSX, coming around the last corner to start its lap, and it crosses the line right now to start its lap time, and as you can see it is coming up to 154 miles an hour just before it goes on the brakes, and now 154 miles an hour is much faster than we've seen the car go this series, and obviously the transmission, which is customizable, has had to be upgraded from the 2 setting, which we saw in the first episode, to the 6 setting this episode, obviously to accommodate for the extra power and the extra speed it could achieve, and so it's actually more relevant to this car now. And as you can see, we've been flying already, and we flew through the first sector with cornering speeds we have not seen from this car yet, and it is absolutely brilliant to see this car going this quickly. And now we're coming around that very difficult incline corner, but just breezed on through. This is obviously through to the downforce, the tyres and everything, which just gives the car so much grip. Coming through the corkscrew, bit of squibbling under braking, but now it's coming downhill out the end of the corkscrew and has done perfectly fine there. So now it's coming on to start the 3rd sector, and it's been a completely blistering lap time from this NSX. And really, what can I say, there's a bit of a slide out there, but obviously with the grippy tyres and high downforce, it's been able to be beautifully controlled with minimal lap time loss. And now we're going to pile on the nitrous, which is on the highest setting of 70, and it's going to cross the lap time now for a blistering lap time of 1 minute 17.7, which is a time we have not seen so far this series, and it's just blown everything else we've seen out of the water. So as you can see, that was an amazing lap time, with it offering an improvement per lap of 22 seconds from the standard car, which is just sublime. Even if it is 5.5 seconds short of the predicted possible time, it's still absolutely unbelievable regardless. But I suppose unsurprising, as the horsepower per tonne ratio for the standard car was 209 horsepower per tonne, but this modified NSX has a 405 horsepower per tonne ratio, which just outlines one of the many improvements this car has had, and is part of the reason it's had a 22 second a lap improvement. And that lap was also about 33 seconds a lap faster than the slowest car, which we just saw previously. So 22 seconds a lap from the standard car and 33 seconds a lap from the slowest car is absolutely brilliant. It just shows how our skills and expertise that we've acquired from this series have improved the road-going NSX to no end. But now, we've seen how quick that NSX is, but can it actually be faster than a real-life racing NSX from the Japanese Super GT series? And now, this Super GT NSX has 30 more horsepower than the souped-up NSX we just saw, as this has 492 horsepower, and it's only 11 kilograms heavier at 1150 kilograms or 1.15 tons. And this Super GT NSX, rather unsurprisingly, also has front and rear aero parts fitted, and on the standard settings, the front has less downforce than the NSX that we created, but the rear has more downforce than our NSX. And now the Super GT NSX is left as standard, so the suspension, aero, transmission parts have not been customised for this track, just to see whether our modified NSX is better than an unmodified racing NSX. But obviously if I modify the suspension, transmission, tyres, power, etc., this racing car would be much quicker, but that's not the point of this test. And so here we are on board for the Super GT NSX's lap, and obviously this is the Mobile 1 Super GT NSX, but regardless it is a Super GT Racing NSX car, and it crosses the line now to start its flying lap, and as you can see it's reaching 448 miles an hour at the end of the straight, which is 6 miles an hour slower than the Racing NSX, than our ultra modified NSX I mean, which is slower, and instantly we can see there it's just a lot slower, as you know, in terms of a straight line speed. And also it doesn't seem to be as happy going round the track as well. It just the cornering speeds we can take aren't as high, obviously because the front downforce is less, and the tyres in this car are racing mediums, not racing super softs like we've seen in our ultra modded car. But anyway, we're coming up to start the uphill section of the track, and you can just tell already it's slower. It's slow in a straight line, it's not as happy going around corners, and generally I thought this was going to be a close test. It's actually a walkover, which I'm sure you can see already. And now there's scribbling under braking, which we did see from our modified NSX, but not to the same extent with this NSX, and that is because weirdly this NSX, although it's a racing car, actually has what the game calls standard brakes, whereas our car has racing brakes on it. So what's going on is madness, but that could be why there's increased scribbling. Also the less amount of front downforce could also be for that. And let's come around the final corner, and now our NSX would already have finished the lap by now. This one is still coming across the line to finish with a time of 1 minute 23.3 seconds, which is actually 5.6 seconds a lap slower than the modified NSX, which all just goes to show that if you actually know what you're doing, then you can make a real impact on any car's lap time if you modify it correctly. So we've just seen that our road going but ultra modified NSX is faster than a Super GT NSX, and that's all well and good, but can it be faster than a quicker car? And I'm thinking a car that's quicker than Super GT NSX, actually a lot quicker than the Super GT NSX. I'm actually going for the Toyota GT1 Le Mans Racer. Now this car has 776 horsepower, which is just less than 300 more than our modded NSX, and it weighs only 900 kilograms, which is nearly 250 kilograms less than our NSX. Also the GT1 has front and rear aero parts fitted that as standard are on their maximum settings, which are way higher than the levels of downforce we have seen on our NSX's added aerodynamic parts. And so it would seem like a walkover for the GT1, but you're forgetting that the Toyota GT1 has less grippy tyres, racing mediums, which we found to be just less than 4 seconds a lap slower than the grippiest ones which our modded NSX is using. Also the GT1 does not have the benefit of nitrous or suspension or transmission settings tuned just so for the track. But also finally, you'll be seeing the lap in the background now of the Toyota GT1, but finally you may have noticed that the extra 300 horsepower that the Toyota GT1 has means that it actually has difficulty putting its power down and wheel spinning out of corners, despite its very high aero settings and having very grippy tyres, although not as grippy as the ones that our ultra modded NSX has. And so which one, our ultra modded NSX or our Toyota GT1, do you think would be quickest? Or do you actually think it's obvious? And if you do think it's obvious, you're actually not that right there, to be honest. Because despite the fact that the Toyota GT1 had 2 class wins in the Le Mans 24-hour race and was driven by people such as Uko Katayama, Martin Brundle and Alan McNish, this Le Mans 24-hour racer was absolutely blisteringly quick and is a proper blue-blooded racing car, make no mistake of that. But this Toyota GT1 set a lap time only 0.8 of a second a lap faster than our road-going, albeit highly modified Honda NSX. And so I think that just goes to show how big of a difference effectively tuning and modifying a road car can be, and how it can actually go toe-to-toe with the big boys seen in the Le Mans 24-hour races. And albeit this is only a one-lap scenario, and obviously our ultra-modded NSX is suited specifically for a one-lap scenario with its ultra-grippy tyres and nitrous set just to last one lap, and how a car that is specifically designed for one of the pinnacle motorsport events has been worked on at highly trained engineers at Toyota, set a lap only 0.8 of a second faster than this ragtag NSX that we've just cooked up. And I think that just shows just how powerful tuning and modifying a car, especially a road-going car, actually is. And anyway, that is the end for this What Matters Most series, and for the time being anyway, the end of me having a serious and intelligent series on YouTube. And while there are still some questions from this series and some debates that need to be solved, hopefully I can solve them in other videos in the future, once I've done some more laid back videos again, which to be honest, I really need to do, because apart from my F1 Manager videos, there aren't really many other laid back videos on this channel, to be honest, and I'm going to try and get some done over the summer period. And so now I'll see you guys for the videos which hopefully are going to solve the underlying questions from this series, and we maybe even return to this series and have a season 2 of the What Matters Most series on a different game in the future. And obviously this is all going to be after once I've done some more laid back videos. And so I'm looking forward to all these videos. I hope you join me for them, and if you do, I'll see you guys then.